Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 206.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you guys are tuning in over and over again, because you know what we've been doing. We've been combing the globe, so to speak, finding entrepreneurs who have done the thing that you are like, wow, I cannot believe that that's possible. But here's the key. Remember, all of that they have done is absolutely possible for you as well. I know you've heard it from me. I know I've tried to share it with you, but now you get to hear it from so many other individuals. And yet we found another one in a completely different industry who has managed to hit the $100,000 in a month mark. Now, I know you're thinking $100,000 in a year would be great, and then I could just leave my job and who knows, but I know there's a number of you out there who want to really, really hit it big, create more jobs, clean, safe, affordable housing, make a difference in your communities. And I'm looking for those individuals for you so that you can see just how close you really are to making that happen. So today, what we have is we're going to be talking to an app guy. You're like, what? The App Store? Absolutely. Ha, pun intended. Anyway, today we have Tom. He's the founder or co-founder of Dom and Tom, a mobile application development shop. They started in 2009. They're now on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies 2 years in a row. Here are some of the companies that they have done work for: Priceline, Fitch, Bloomberg, General Electric, CliffsNotes, and my personal favorite, PowerRangers. That's right, the Emmys. And there are so many more. Here's the point. It's a skill set, and we're going to learn a lot about it and how he did it too. Welcome, Tom. Tom, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you?
I'm having great times right now. Just enjoying myself in the summer.
In the summer?
Yeah, well, I guess it technically is the summer, isn't it?
I guess so, but it's just when you say you're in Chicago, I don't know. I never think of Chicago and hot at the same time.
That's fair. Yeah, the winters are... They test one's mettle. I will say that.
and indeed, but they keep the computers cold. That's got to be good.
Yeah, actually, it's good to keep the focus going and keep the computers cold. I like to get our thermostat down to 60 degrees if I can in my apartment with my wife, and she and I fight over that all the time.
Did you say 60 degrees?
Yeah, I like it. I like it really cold.
You realize in California we'd pull out a parka, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah, just letting you know. That's like California winter is what you're now talking about. But okay, it's all good. It's all good. So, but what I would love for you to do, if you could, for a small moment, if you introduce a little bit of the business that you currently have today. So before we dig into the past, tell us a little bit about what Dom and Tom has become and what it is and what you guys do that has allowed you to be able to hit that mark.
Sure, be happy to. Well, so what Dom and Tom is a digital agency. We go out, we build digital solutions, everything for applications for Google Glass, iPhone, Android, Microsoft Surface, all those different platforms that you see, anything that's got a flat screen or even a curved screen nowadays, we're building for it, and we're thinking about it in that way. We started in the doldrums of the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, and really we saw a huge opportunity. iPhone just came out, and we said, we're going to be a part of this new revolution. When everything was going south, we were looking north, and, we really grabbed a great market and entered into it and really made a name for ourselves in just a few years. And so, all those companies you just listed off, I mean, we didn't have any of those relationships when we first started, and it was wide open. And in a few short years, doing really great work, we were able to work with some of the best companies in the world.
Okay, so this is going to be a great start because there's a lot of things that I know that some people, are thinking to themselves and you said it, you didn't have those relationships when you first got started. And I definitely want to make sure that we pick up on that because I think that's going to be very, very key. I think it's key for any business, and I'm assuming it's been key for yours.
Absolutely. For us, when I say we didn't do this business, I really mean we didn't do this business. My twin brother is Dominic. Him and I are family, and obviously twins. He's a co-founder, our CEO, and our chief technology officer. He's an engineer, and I came from the great world of collections. I was doing facing bills, but it was interesting because he really is the talent and great brain power. But it was up to me to sort of figure out, hey, how do we start a company around this? This is a smart thing. How do we get clients? How do we do all these things? And it honestly, the first couple of months was extremely difficult. Dominic and I, 27 years old, basically quit our apartments, quit our jobs, moved into a really small apartment in Queens, New York, living together. It was pretty bare bones. There was a sandwich shop right across the street that we'd go to every single day for $7, and that would be our lunch and our dinner. And we would eat granola for breakfast. And what was interesting, though, is that because it was a new market with iPhone, you have to remember iPhone came out in 2007, and so no one was making applications, or if there were, there were so many people trying to figure out how to get into that market. And we sort of got into hackathons. We were winning some contests, and it became noticed by people who were hosting those hackathons. Coincidentally, people like Hearst Publication or Houghton Mifflin or General Electric or Bloomberg, they were the ones hosting this because it was a thinly veiled, talent pool and job culling, for all these great talented people and engineers. So we would go to these competitions and they would say, you won first prize. By the way, can you build our application for us? Which is the real prize, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a fun way to do it. And that's really how we got most of our business going. But man, starting your own company is really, you're assembling the ship while you're already at sea. You're really
well said. I like that. Yes.
You're just lashing it together. You're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And man, oh man, there are so many mistakes that happen along the way. And I remember when I've been married for about 2 years now. I actually met my wife the week Dominic and I were trying to figure out if we were going to throw in the towel. We actually got down to $7 in our bank account, and it was pretty drastic. And I actually went to the local bar and I said, I got $7 left in my bank account. I'm going to buy the next girl I see a drink. And and sure enough, it was this cute brunette. And it was my at the time it was my not a girl that I knew, but I said, hey, I'm going to buy you a drink. And she said, why? She's like, well, I just quit my job. It's 2009. I'll see, I might as well, I got nothing to lose. And she said, oh man, it's 2009. Don't have a job. I should buy you a drink. And I just said, it's funny. We, one thing went to another. And the thing was, I just realized there were those small moments that you look up and you say, you know what, I'm just going to hang in there. I'm going to see how this goes. And, sure enough, I think, things that you can't learn, people try to start a company, they try to buy a book and they try to learn what they can, but really it just comes down to persistence. And, Dominic and I had that, and people we were around, had a little bit of persistence on how to move forward with it. We were still trying to figure things out.
Indeed. And that's exactly what I like. Now, before we get too much further, I've got a question that I've got to ask.
Sure.
Because, you're introducing yourself, but it's, if you come from the world of bill collections, it could be that you actually have talked to some of our listeners already before and just not know it, huh?
I guess that's true. I was doing bill collections for a law firm at the time. And what's weird about it, I will say this, and I'm sure your audience could appreciate this. Anyone who is running their own small business, cash flow is king. And it is very difficult to move forward in your dreams and in your business if you cannot get paid on time correctly. And one of the big successes I didn't realize was I was doing this odious job that no one wants to do, but man, I got really good at being able to get people to pay me on time and pay me correctly without too much hassle or fuss. And I hate to say it, I know no one likes to talk about revenue management and cash management, but man, oh man, it has really set us apart in being able to just plan our lives and plan invest our investments for how we're going to grow. If you can't control your cash flow, it's really difficult to really see further ahead than 2 weeks, let alone 2 years.
Yeah. How about 20 minutes, Tom? 20 minutes.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you get it's too hard, and for us, we Dominic and I had it in our books that we weren't going to hire for at least 3 years. And we hired after the first year, we were up to 3 employees. By the second year, we were up to 10. And, in order just to plan like that for people who are trying to move their lives around, I mean, you got to be able to control your cash flow. It's very difficult. But, it's one of those things I learned. And I was very, very grateful to do that. It's part of my business.
Well, what I think that speaks to a lot is that oftentimes when we're looking to start a business or build a business or make anything happen, we discount what we already know as somehow no longer useful. But clearly in this case, and in this case specifically, it happened to be a skill set you came to the table with that is absolutely needed. And every business owner needs either they've got to do it or they got to find somebody to do it for them. So you just were able to leverage what was already there.
Well, yeah, thanks for saying that. I appreciate you. And I think that's a very valuable point. Actually, one thing that Dominic and I were very clear about was, what is he good at? What is he, really an expert at? And what am I an expert at? And I just never seen, well, I've seen it rarely. I'll put it this way, that someone is good at just about every point of the business, right? There's
who's that?
Yeah.
I need to interview that person.
But exactly. And that's the thing, I'm lucky. I was literally born with a twin brother who, really complements a lot of the things that I
Yeah.
can't do. And vice versa. So it was, I got really lucky in that. And my encouragement for your audience is really understand, what are you good at and what are the things you just are not good at? Because if you're not good at it, it becomes a very, very hard struggle to either overcome it. You got to find a partner that's willing to come in and really cover your bases on that one, because it can be, really hard to get your business rolling if you can't do all portions of the business.
Well, and I think business by default is, depending on how many people you're looking to serve, you're not going to be able to do all parts of the business. I mean, that when you hit those points of scale, like you guys have done, being able to make the Inc. List, etc., there's no such thing as you doing it all at that point. There's just too many questions.
No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. That was why we had to start hiring. We just couldn't. At some point, Dominic had to stop programming. He had to start, managing as a leader. So, he was always managing from day one, but he was also one of our best engineers. And so, being able to communicate and train up your own team is very, very different skill set as a manager than it is as someone who's a doer.
Well, this is perfect. This is perfect because I know there's a number of people, and I'm talking to you right now. You're in Home Depot listening to this. There's a number of people who are real estate people, and they go, well, I can fix it myself. Well, I know how to, hang the door. I know how to do my own books, or I know how to do these things. But what I'm hearing from you is that at some point, even the skill sets that you currently are the quote unquote best at, you're still going to have to find someone else to do those because they're now above or below your pay grade.
Right, of course. And, it's interesting because everyone says, if you're, or the people I've talked to anyway, they're like, well, I'm the CEO, but I'm also the head janitor. What do I do for a living? Whatever it takes. That's what it comes down to. All these great adages that an entrepreneur has. And they're, those are all true. But at some point, you do have to know what are you good at? What are you needed to do right now? And there's formulas out there. People, some of the blogs I read say, hey, once you find that someone can do 80% of your job, make sure that hire that person. That way, you free yourself up for whatever you need to do for the next step. And you're constantly reinventing what your role is and what your value proposition is. And it's not always a linear process. Sometimes it's leaps and bounds. Sometimes there's a bit of regression, and that's a very interesting mentality to have. People think that they're the CEOs, so they start at the top and then they just continue to go and stay at the top, and that's a difficult thing to have a conversation over.
I don't know anyone who you don't last, because at the beginning there's no one to do the stuff at the bottom if you stay at the top.
Right, exactly. CEO just means you're the boss of one right now, and so
exactly, and you're probably doing a horrible job, especially at the beginning. But details. These are minor details. So let's go back in time a little bit, because I tend to think that entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. I mean, when you think about superheroes, they get dressed up. Occasionally, They put on masks. They wear sometimes tights and capes, and they go around using their special set of skills to improve the quality of life of those that they're saving. And I think entrepreneurs do the same thing. I think another way that's the same is that before the Hulk or Spider-Man were either of those two characters, they were Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, etc. They had a life, they had something else, they were on a completely different path, and then that superhero moment hits them and they change and they decide to use that power for good in some cases and not always. So my question is, since the superhero has an origin story, before Dom and Tom existed as a company, what is your origin story? Where does this begin? How does Tom become the Tom Tancredo we know today from where he started?
Sure. Yeah. I sort of mentioned it a little bit. My origin story really, it came from moving to New York in 2001, and basically getting a series of jobs. I did just about everything you could think of. I was a kindergartner teacher. I was writing for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
I did just about every single job you could think of. Film projectionist. I was a cook. These are just jobs that you just get when you're in your 20s in New York City. And everything that I wanted to do, I knew I always wanted to start my own business. I knew I always wanted to run my own life. And I just didn't know exactly which industry. I was always fascinated with other industries and figuring out, how they do things. And I noticed that there was a lot of overlap. There's always an emphasis on customer service. There's always an emphasis on being current with understanding of technology and trends, which is not always technology. Sometimes that could be fashion or cultural trends. And there's a deep understanding on what is worth someone's time and what is the value of that time. So to speak to that very clearly, there are things that people want, but there are things that people want and then they will pay for. And I spent a lot of time trying to think about that as I was going from one job to another. And what was interesting was my brother Dominic moved out to New York from Chicago about 2 years after I did. Him and I were both bouncing around jobs, doing one thing or another. And at the end of the day, we both realized that we wanted to. We had our fill of the New York dramas, and we had our fill of New York jobs. We wanted to really create a company that instilled our values, and our motto is "Do good, be good." We wanted to do things that were exciting in a technology company, or exciting in doing technology with it, and all that sort of hovered around applications at the time. And we didn't want to do things where it was like, okay, well, let's create a babysitting firm, or let's do a concrete factory, or do other things like that. We wanted to have something that was going to stimulate us intellectually and really inspire us to create change in the world that we think would be a positive one. And so when we were forming the company, we were both looking around saying, you know what, this hits all the marks. This is a great opportunity. Let's go after it. Let's think about it. And let's figure out how we're going to really build great products for great people. And 5 years later, 6 years later, we've opened up our offices in Chicago and LA, and we just continued on. It's been great for us, and that's really what the origin story was. It came down to Dominic and I knowing that we wanted to work together, knowing we wanted to have a principle-based company, and knowing that we wanted to really figure out what was the characteristics that were going to inspire us for the long term, and this fit perfectly for us.
What I like about all that, well, besides the fact that you were born with a built-in business partner, is the fact that you, not in everything that you said, you didn't say what was going to earn the most amount of money.
No, honestly, well, I keep my original business plan. By the way, for your audience, everyone should write a business plan. Not that you're going to stick to it, because you're not. Life doesn't. There is no business plan for life. It will never happen. But it's great discipline for you to actually write for 30, 40, 50 pages to everything you want to have happen and how you think you're going to get there. And to look at it, and keep it. I would definitely keep it and look at it like a diary note and just say, wow, that's what we thought. What a beautiful, imagination that we had. and really think about it. But it's great because you start understanding where you want to be and what you want to have happen for yourself in the next 5-10 years. And that's also really great. When Dominic and I wrote that down, none of it was saying, oh, we want to change, our lives to be richer, more successful. We want, 10 yachts and figure out how to port them from coast to coast. It wasn't like that. I mean, but what we did say is that we wanted to work with each other. That's a lifelong commitment, and we wanted to do things that were stimulating for ourselves, and we wanted to earn a living. And honestly, our goals were very humble. We wanted to make about $50,000 a year, and that was it. We both said, well, we do all these things. We have a budget for ourselves. We'll be able to successfully do that. And and 2 years later, we've blown that out of the water. And then by now, it's kind of laughable to think about.
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't say it's laughable for us. I mean, when we were in our 20s and single, it's a lot different than being in your 30s and married. Suddenly, you have a lot more obligation.
A few more
things to buy. Sure.
Indeed. I mean, you got to have that. And then in your case, you probably are. It's almost a business expense for you to buy the latest Apple device or HTC or whomever's coming out with a new device. It's almost like, honey, I've got to buy this. You don't understand. If I don't,
we have a room in both offices just dedicated to devices. In New York, Chicago, and LA, and even with several of our vendors, we have to pay for their devices. So, Apple just announced a new set of products this week. Guess what we're doing? We're going on a shopping spree. We just have to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like par for the course. But that would be a good part. I actually would enjoy that part a lot. So let's talk for a second though about what I like to call that superhero moment. There's that moment when you're still the regular Dom and Dom, and then there's the moment that you go, hey, we have something that we could choose to offer to other people. Where did you guys find your courage to go out there and get that first client and say, and you should pay us for this? Okay, let's be real. Getting started can be a challenge, but it doesn't mean it's impossible for you. And what's really cool is that you're going to hear how they were able to do it too. Hopefully this series of individuals who have been out there shaking and baking and making things happen has been able to help you, encourage you, inspire you, and maybe even give you what you've been missing to go out there and feel like, you know what, I can finally make this happen. So here's what I want to know. How many things have you realized that you have in common with individuals you've been listening to these last few weeks? I find that interesting too. Hopefully you'll take that information and just go, you know what? I can make this happen. In fact, if you're looking for some hints, some tips, some tricks, some tactics that you can use, you know where I'm about to say, go ahead and get a copy. of my book, Cash Flow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth to Any Economy. You can get the electronic copy at no cost to you. Just send a text message to to 72,000. Text the word book to 72,000. Again, that's 72000. The keyword is book. And for those of you outside the U.S., just go ahead and go to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Now, let's go find out where they got their courage from.
That's funny. So this is kind of it actually came from me watching Dominic, what I thought was at the time getting exploited. My brother Dominic, right before we started the company, he was working at a ad agency, and they asked him to work on a piece of software. And he looked at the piece of software, looked at the schematics, and he said, I'm going to reinvent this. I'm going to redo this all over and build it independently and really make this into something great. And the company said, you know what? That was great. In fact, we liked it so much. We're going to license this to Intel and Intel and McDonald's and a couple of our other clients for millions of dollars. And he got a $500 bonus and a trip to London to their Christmas party. And I was looking at this. It's like, you know what? I'm kind of sick of this. I'm kind of fed up of us, or Dominic at the time. I'm kind of looking at Dominic. I was like, I'm kind of fed up that my brother's really doing these great works, and people, they like him. They really, he does really great work. And I was sort of in the same position myself, where I said, I know we could build a business around this. I know we can do something, really great. Dominic, is a great talent, and I could build a business and really figure out how to expand our services and offering, and sort of, and I said to him, like, why don't we just, there's no difference between what you just did for this company and what we could do, together. Why don't we just do it together? And he said, yeah, that's great. And I said, you'll be the CEO, and I'll be our, chief sales guy, and we'll go out and we'll get some business cards. And we did. And, what was amazing about it was we did we spent about $5,000 on a marketing event, and I was just papering the town with just those, those tags, those like rip-off tag things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so said, hey, $900, we'll teach you how to make an app over the weekend. And we got, we got about 11 people that joined us, paid $900 each. It was a 3-day seminar over the weekend. We both took time off our job, and that was our seed money. We got,
nice.
we got about $10,000 from that. So that was great. And that, to me, was like, okay, great. So that was working. And then that's where we got our first clients. And, we did some more good work with those clients. And then good work begets good work.
I just love the grassroots nature of it. I love the down home, straight to sales. I mean, I love that because you're like, it wasn't hyper complicated. Let's go sell something and see if we got it here and make it happen. So, here's a couple of things that I'm thinking about. On the journey to getting to that $100,000 a month, I'm going to make an assumption that if you look back at the person you were before versus the one you are today, that those are two completely different people. They just happen to have the same name and live in the same body.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd like to think that I'd like to think that maybe I'm a little bit wiser, but I don't even know about that. I definitely had more energy, and I was definitely willing to get more punched in the face by life when I was younger. But man, oh man, I mean it is interesting to think about that person as they, when they first started. There was a favorite quote that I had from an entrepreneur that I met with in New York. It was a really smart woman in the food industry. And she was asked a question one time, if you knew now what you knew then, what would you have done differently with your startup? Sort of one of those, casually like, hey, what do you think? It's like, if I knew now what I knew then, I would have curled up in a ball and cried.
Yes.
And that's what it is, really.
Yes.
I mean, like, you can't know. You don't want to know. Like, if you have to know of all the heartache and hardship, you don't want to know. You don't. But in any case, that's kind of what I think about is like, oh my goodness, I'm glad he can't remember the future, because that would be. That poor Tom would never get out of bed.
Totally. And I get it. So that brings up the very thing that I think is interesting for many entrepreneurs. When it comes to the ups, the downs, we'll call it the roller coaster, what have you, wow, how important has maintaining a proper mindset been for you? And especially because now you've got a business partner. It's not just you. You've got to maintain his mindset also. Just because you're twins doesn't mean you think the same and feel the same and react the same. You still got to manage that together. So what have been your secret to keep that on straight and to help him keep it on straight?
It's interesting. We got really good advice from a couple of our competitors, our future competitors and current competitors. In my industry, I don't know how it is in many other industries. A lot of our competitors actually are very friendly with each other, and they're willing to give a good advice because you never know. You never know if you can help each other out. And some of the advice that we did was we made sure that someone owned the majority share of the company, and that's Dominic. Dominic owns the majority. And that's important because at some point in the day, you need to be able to make a decision, and that decision has to stick, and you have to move forward. So, regardless of equalness, or if I'm doing more work or he's doing more work, whatever that is, it doesn't matter. What it comes down to is that you have to understand that we have to move forward. We're working as a team, and there's always going to be a reason to be anxious or nervous or a little bit upset with one another. There's always a good reason for that. And then once you get married, obviously you now have a champion in your personal life, in your corner, that really wants you to be, present and take care of you, but also can say, hey, there's a problem, so-and-so isn't doing their work. All that stuff has to be put to the side because you really got to be true to the mission and be true to the goals that are happening here. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's something that when you were asking me, I really came to mind.
Well, the thing is, and you hit on something that, again, there's just so many similarities because people ask me all the time, hey, Jay, should I do this deal 50-50? I'm like, absolutely not.
No.
No. And here you are, and this is what I like about you saying it, is you can't get any closer than, here's my twin brother, and we still don't do 50-50.
No, yeah, you can't do it. And that's crazy to me because there are so many companies that are just like, oh, it's 50-50. Oh, there's no tie-breaking mechanism. Those partnerships will most likely be destroyed, and they'll be destroyed in such a weird way. Oddly enough, because someone doesn't own or doesn't have the final say, you get into more fights. And that kind of blew my mind. It sounds counterintuitive. I'll say that again. It's you get into more fights 50-50 because suddenly there's no tiebreaker there, and so you just have everyone sort of digs in their heel, and it's very frustrating because for me, I really wanted to own my own company and be the leader of my own company, and it was very difficult to have a minority stake. But at the end of the day, you look at things and you look at the opportunities of what you're doing. You're really being able to do really great work with, family that you love. And I know a lot of people have issues working with family. I do too. But, it's part of our DNA and part of our business model and how we operate. But as you go forward, it's very, you have to be very clear as to what you're willing to accommodate and what you need to stick to your guns on. And this to me was, I'd rather work with my brother, work with really good people and build a great business with him than to say, oh, I need to take a majority stake and, live life like that. Yes.
Yeah, totally understood. I'm right there with you. So what would you say? Many people, we all have things that help us, hurt us. But when you think about, the you used to be, the one that's in front of us today, what would you say would be some of the habits, daily routines, repeated actions, things that you have done that have contributed positively to getting to that $100,000 mark? And then more, and probably just as important, what were some of the habits that you had to let go of that were in the way that from helping you to achieve those things?
Sure. One of the things I had to learn, I learned very quickly about myself was whatever your vices are and whatever your pleasures are, those get ramped up, to 11. So if you're like, oh, I love to eat, and you'll find yourself into become a stress eater. Or if you're like, oh, I really love to do yoga, or I love to do exercise, suddenly you'll be going to the gym 2 or 3 times more than you would ever. And you'd be there 2 hours, 3 hours at a time, because that's your way to your mechanism of releasing stress or handling that. Being cognizant of that, whether it's good or bad, is incredibly important. It was one of my secrets to actually figuring out what were my triggers. So for me, for stress, I would have to say that going out at night was definitely a trigger for me. So I said, you know what? Is a stress release what I want to do? Is I want to transform that stress release into something positive. So I was finding, if I take, if I like to go out and eat, instead of doing that, and I gained 30 pounds in 2 years, and I think that's just all due to stress. I said, you know what? I'll take this this habit that's forming, and I'll put it towards exercise. And I've already lost about 10 pounds in about a year now, and it's just been incredible for me. So I don't find myself, and it still hits all the same triggers that I need to have fulfilled for me to be able to operate on a functional level. You just take the negative portion of your life, you put them into the positive, and that it just blows you away as to how productive you can become. And even small things that you read up upon. Just everything that you do with your diet, how you operate. I remember drinking 8 cups of coffee before noon, in the first 2 years. Yeah, I mean, you think about that. You're just jacking yourself up. You're amping yourself up mentally and bodily. And, that's great for about a year or two in your 20s. But once you get into your 30s and you've been doing this for a while, you can't do that anymore. So I drink a gallon of water a day, things like that. Just being very cognizant as to how you're physically treating yourself really impacts and flows through everything else. If you're not healthy, if you're not happy, you really got a challenge that is going to happen more and more and impact more and more of your business. You're not in it for the long haul. You're not setting yourself up to be in it for the long haul.
It's interesting you say these things specifically because you're not the only one during the series to actually bring up how health as like this is everything else goes over to the wayside. I had to learn how to take better care of myself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say that it's more important if you're thinking about starting a business, start working out now. Like, make that the habit before, like 6 months before you start a business, before you even think about doing it. Just start build in the right habits. Start doing, the right kind of foods that you want to do. Like anything that it is there, set yourself up for success before even, taking the plunge and getting in there. People just, it shocked me how much it can make a difference. Just getting a good night's sleep, just doing that alone is just wonderful.
It's funny that you mentioned that sleep. This whole quantitative self thing has been something that intrigues me, and that's actually been sleep and water. My water intake and my personal sleep habits have changed significantly, and for those very reasons. And I'm such a better my coffee intake goes down because I've slept more, and because I'm drinking more water, my coffee intake also goes almost through the floor because of those two things in and of themselves. And I get more done, and I'm more focused, and it's all awesome. Agreed. Any other habits that you would say, here's something I had to let go of or learned in order to get to the goals and where we are today?
I mean, really. You're a healthy level of paranoia. I was always looking at the bank account, and I was always looking at where my next sale was coming in. I mean, we're still doing, great sales. We're on track for 30%, 40% growth this year. But that's just because it's part of my DNA. Like I never lose touch of that pulse, and I don't think anyone else who's starting their own business should either. You should always be cognizant as to where it comes down to. I would like to say that I know more about where the money and the finances go in my company than I ever have, and it's been incredibly powerful. I've seen, man, you coming out of. I'm a product and a child from like the financial crisis. Honestly, 2008, 2009. You see people, just businesses that have been around for hundreds of years, all around you in New York City, just collapsing left and right, and all across the country, all across the world, of course. But you see these also your friends and family just going through hardship, and some of it is just they didn't know what was happening to their own business and they didn't know where the money was going, and man, oh man, or they were just very, very confident that it was just a cyclical downturn, and that they were going to be able to, make that next sale, and they weren't, planning for the worst. And, for us, we were growing through the crisis rather than collapsing with it. And it was, part and parcel with just being very, paranoid and very much aware as to where your growth is, and then being able to shift on a dime if you have to.
Indeed. And interesting thing is you and I, your company and us, we both started at the same time, just different industries, obviously.
Sure.
But I find that interesting through that chaos. There's that dichotomy. There's those who, depending on their perspective on it, they went down, and there's those who went up. And just because of how they responded to the exact same stimulus, the same stimulus came in both, in all directions. You guys clearly responded completely differently.
Sure.
Than others, and therefore you have the results that you have today. And I think that speaks to your mindset and vision and a number of things as well. But you mentioned something that I know a number of people grab at for the excuse as here's why they can't get stuff done. You meant the whole concept of money. And I'm curious. I think I know the answer, but I just want to hear you say it. And more importantly, I want them to hear you say, how much money how did you get started with, the business in and of itself? I mean, when you go, hey, I want to do a business, and then you go and you look at the bank account like you were talking about, you're like, well, I got $7. What are you going to do? How did you deal with that thought process and not having money to work with specifically?
Well, Jay, I mean, the first year we made $33,000 between the two of us. Living in New York City. I mean, that's just not a lot of money in any direction, how you cut it or where you go with it. So I'll be honest with you. We didn't have any money to start this business. We had a hunch that we can get clients. Again, that part of the reason why I was down to $7 in my bank account was, we were doing this we were figuring out the business for 3 or 4 months, trying to get, we were doing a $1,000 project here, a $2,000 project there. No one knew what it cost to build an app, so no one knew how to price one out. Right. So while it's a booming industry, you just don't know what to charge for it. That was a big learning curve for us, and no one knew what to pay for it. So you didn't know if anyone was getting a good deal or a bad deal. So that was very difficult. So I don't have a lot of, I hate to say this, and I don't mean to be rude, I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who say I don't have enough money to start a business. I just don't think that's an excuse. I think the most money you have is your time and your will to build. I remember when Dominic and I we were both working at our companies. We'd work a 9 to 5, and then we'd get home by 6, and then we'd work 7 to 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's what we did for about a couple months before we quit our jobs and said, this has got to be full time, and we're going to do this. And I think that's you pay for that privilege, and you're paying yourselves for that privilege. This is a commitment that you are going to do for your business, and if you're not willing to put in, the hours for it up front, that's really tough, because it doesn't get easier. I will say that it gets more interesting, it gets a lot more fun. But I wouldn't say it gets easier.
Oh, this is perfect then. So you're telling me that there isn't easy street. That there isn't this point where you just go, oh gosh, it's so much better now that we're here.
There's an easy street. I have not found it yet.
but that's not what I read in the magazine.
Honestly, yeah, Jay, I mean, I don't know how your business is like, but for mine, it gets more fun. I will say this, right now, Dominic and I have been doing interesting things like this show for one, but and I've done certain things like I've made investments into restaurants and into other businesses, but honestly, you earn what you make, and if you're earning $100,000 a month, good on you. You will earn that. And I say that to my other employees. I get employees that come to me. I get employees who come out of college like, I want to earn. Not earn. I want to make $100,000 a year. That's what they say. Okay, great. That sounds great. do you want to earn $100,000 a year? Because those are two different things.
Well, it's
Here's a path
completely
to
different.
earn $100,000 a year. Here's a path to earn $100,000 a month. I'm not going to put a limit to say how much you can make. I will never do that. I'm just going to show you a path that I would say, that's how you do it. And if you want it, go on it, because I'm on it. And that's whether you find it fun, easy, or hard, it's your choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the difference between earn and make, because last time I checked, only our government can make money. The rest of us has to earn it. So, yes, I am with you with that 1,000%. So in this journey, and I'm curious to know your perspective on this, in this journey that you've been on, you're on this path. You trajectory is great. Clearly, more apps are coming. New device. So long as they keep coming up with a new device and a new OS, someone's going to need an update to the app you've already built. So you're going to be around for quite some time.
Yep.
My question becomes to you: how valuable do you consider errors and judgments and/or mistakes, or all of the wrong turns you've made to get this far? How valuable are they?
I'm still making them today. I'm making big mistakes, and they're incredibly valuable, because that's old adage. You grow through your mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, and you keep moving on. That's how you get yourself educated. They're painful. Let's face it. No one wants to make a mistake. Who wants to be wrong? Right. There are days where I wake up and I say, I think on average, I made about 35%. 35% of my decisions were correct this week. Maybe of them.
Yeah.
If I'm generous,
Yes.
and that's just being kind. There's so many things in which you're not making the right decisions, and moreover, the job is never the same. So if you're growing your company, or if your company's struggling and it's not growing, it's going in the other direction, you're presented with different challenges, probably challenges you haven't had before, or if you have, you're back to them. So you got to explore them in a different way, and it's very difficult. And you're going to be making the right calls and the bad calls. The one thing that I will say is you can pretty much go through any tough trial or decision and mistake, so long as you have a commitment from your team on the path forward. And that path can be a big question mark to everyone, but so long as you're okay to say, let's take this journey, let's walk it forward, and let's be transparent about it. You can really just do about anything you need to do. And we certainly have, and I've proven that with our team. And we still have our number one employee with us 6 years later.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's been a real milestone for me. One of my pride points, honestly.
Yeah.
He's been with us ever since day one, and not day one, I should say, but he's been with us since we hired. And man, it means a lot to me that he's stuck with us with all the decisions, both good and bad.
Yeah, that's impressive. I cannot claim that one. I'm sure at all. I think let me see, the closest to that. Yeah, no, nobody's been. I've been here since day one, so that's about it. But you cycle through to find the right ones to make all these things happen. So before we end off here, I'm sure there's a number of people, myself included, we've entertained the idea of, I bet you this would make a great app, or, an app this, an app that, and I would love to, but I don't know who to call. Clearly they can call you. How can we catch up with you guys, figure out what you guys are up to before we end this, and give us, what steps do we need to take if we wanted to engage?
Oh, sure. Just go to our website. It's domandtom.com. It's pretty easy and it rhymes. So, yeah, feel free to do that. We have a great contact form. Feel free to get in touch with us, or call me or email me personally. I have my phone number on the website. So feel free to get in touch with me, or email me at tom@domandtom.com. Happy to talk to anyone. I talk to just about anyone that needs information, because that's how I learned. So I still meet with college freshmen on their great idea, and I meet with seasoned entrepreneurs and Fortune 500 companies to talk about their ideas. And sometimes those ideas are very similar. So
That's good. That's good. That's good. Okay. So, but before we end here, there's a question I just want to ask, because I want you for a moment to talk to all the people listening, because here's what I believe. I believe that there's a person out there who wants to be that superhero. They're ready to put on their cape. They could even be standing in front of the superhero outfit store right now, picking out the colors, their mask, their tights, etc. Yet, in the back of their head, Tom, they still have that voice, and you know the voice that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's loud, but they're waffling back and forth, and they're like, I think I can, but that voice speaks up. And what would you say to that person right now?
There's never been a better time, honestly, and there's never going to be a better time. This is the best time to do it. And if you need some help, there's people around you, you know who they are, and they can, create a list, write a list, and, go out and do it. And I will say this, if there is, further proof, feel free to call me. I'll tell them that they should do it immediately. So
nice. Love it very, very much. I definitely want to say thanks for taking the time to hang out with us, share your journey and the experience, and letting us know that, what we want, it can totally be done. And here you are doing it in a completely different way, and we love you for it.
All right. Thanks so much, Jay. Have a good one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It probably means you're going over to Dom and Tom, because you might be that person who has an idea. You had an idea for an app. You're like, how I'm going to finally get out of my job is I'm going to have this app. Okay, cool. Well, now you have a resource. You have a person. Most importantly, you have more proof that you're shooting too small. $100,000 a year, totally possible. But if you're ready to earn $100,000 a month or more, we've got more people coming to you, so stay tuned for future episodes. Guys, gals, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.